Why do some people pray for years and see no change, while others speak once and doors fly open? The difference is not luck, it is law. You can pray, affirm, visualize, but if deep inside you are resisting, you cancel your own prayer. This is why most people block their blessings without ever realizing it. In this lesson, I will show you how resistance hides in your mind, how it quietly cancels your prayers, and how to dissolve it so blessings can flow freely. You will learn why struggle is not natural, why begging and straining never work, and how the simplest change of thought can release the good you have been waiting for. What you gain from this is freedom. Freedom to receive, freedom to prosper, freedom to heal. And once you know this truth, you will never pray the same way again. Think of how many nights you have gone to bed, repeating the same prayer, the same worry, the same plea, and waking to the same conditions. You ask, you affirm, you hope, and yet nothing seems to move. You wonder if God has forgotten you. But the truth is simpler and stranger. It is not God who is holding back. It is your own resistance. This is the hidden mistake that almost everyone makes. And once you see it, you will understand why your efforts have failed and how quickly they can succeed when you stop blocking the flow. In this teaching, I will uncover the invisible law of resistance, what it is, how it operates in your subconscious, and why it is the single greatest reason most people never see their prayers answered. You will discover how resistance shows up in subtle ways through worry, doubt, guilt, or fear, and how each one secretly tells your subconscious to reject the very thing you desire. I will then give you the antidotes, the simple words and feelings that dissolve resistance, and let the power of your deeper mind work for you. Along the way you will hear stories, examples, and practices that may surprise you, because the key is not struggle, but release. By the end, you will not only know the law, you will know how to master it, so that blessings flow to you as naturally as water runs downhill. Here's something most people completely miss, and it's the reason so many live in frustration. Your blessings are not somewhere far away, waiting for a distant future, waiting for some outside power to release them to you. They are here right now, fully present, ready to flow. But most people live as though they are trapped behind an invisible wall, a barrier that keeps every prayer, every affirmation, every dream locked out of reach. That wall has a name, and it's resistance. The shocking truth is this: the blessings of life are not being withheld from you. They are being resisted by you. Think of this with me. Life itself is abundant by nature. The sun gives freely. The earth brings forth harvest after harvest. The air is rich and cannot be exhausted. The same law that makes trees grow and rivers flow is working in you. Joseph Murphy said again and again, "It is your right to be rich, to be healthy, to be happy. Not because you've earned it, not because someone outside you decided you deserved it, but because life itself is full, and that fullness is your natural inheritance. The problem is never that supply is missing. The problem is that resistance clogs the channel." Now, what is this resistance? It's not some monster outside you. It's not fate or bad luck or even the so-called will of God. Resistance is an inner condition. It's the doubt that whispers, "What if this doesn't work?" It's the fear that pictures disaster instead of blessing. It's the guilt that says, "I don't deserve to prosper." It's the resentment that replays every wrong someone did to you. Each of these feelings becomes like a layer of cement poured around the seed of your prayer, and the subconscious, which is the great soil of life, accepts the hardness as fact. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a farmer scattering seed on the ground. He has the best seed in the world, strong, full of life, capable of producing a rich harvest, but instead of soft soil, he throws the seed on concrete. Days go by. Rain falls. Sun shines. But the seed never takes root. It isn't because the seed lacked power, it's because the ground resisted it. That's how most people live. Their prayers, their desires, their affirmations are powerful seeds. But the soil of their mind is hardened with resistance, so nothing grows. And here's the strange part: many people try to force it. They shout more affirmations. They beg harder in prayer. They work themselves into exhaustion. But just like a farmer stomping on the ground, shouting at the seed to grow on concrete, the effort only makes the soil harder. Resistance doesn't yield to force. It dissolves only when you recognize it, release it, and let the soil become soft again. So the first thing you must see is this: blessings are never withheld. The good you desire already exists in infinite supply. But if you resist it, you cannot see it, you cannot touch it, and you cannot live it. The wall is not outside. The wall is inside. And once you know this, you stop blaming circumstances, you stop blaming fate, and you realize the real work is not to chase blessings but to remove the resistance that blocks them. And that's where we're going. In a moment, I'll show you how this invisible law operates day and night, how your subconscious never sleeps, and why even the smallest resistance gets magnified until it fills your whole life. But before we go there, pause with this truth. The blessings are already here. They're waiting for you the way sunlight waits for a window to open. All you must do is open the mind and let them in. What I'm about to share may seem almost too simple, yet once you grasp it, you will understand why your life looks the way it does and why it will continue to unfold the way it does until you decide to change it. The subconscious mind never sleeps, it never takes a break, never asks for permission, never sets down its tools. Whether you are awake or asleep, whether you are aware or unaware, it is constantly taking the impressions you give it and multiplying them, shaping them, and reproducing them in the outer world. It is like a great engine that runs without ceasing, always faithful, always obedient, always magnifying whatever seed has been dropped into it, no matter if that seed is good or bad, helpful or destructive. Now, here's the dangerous part: because this law is impartial, it cannot tell the difference between what serves you and what harms you. The soil does not argue with the farmer about which seeds should be planted. If he drops thorns, the ground says yes. If he drops roses, the ground says yes. If he drops weeds, the ground says yes. The soil does not resist, it simply grows what is placed within it, and so it is with your subconscious. If you plant thoughts of peace, it grows harmony. If you plant thoughts of fear, it grows confusion. If you plant thoughts of wealth, it grows prosperity. If you plant thoughts of lack, it grows more lack. There is no filter, no policeman standing guard to reject the negative and accept only the positive. The subconscious magnifies what it receives. This is why resistance is so deadly, because resistance itself is a form of suggestion, and the subconscious does not sleep. It keeps working with the picture of resistance until it becomes your lived reality. Let me give you a clear example. Worry is nothing but resistance in disguise. When you worry, you are running a prayer in reverse. You are imagining a picture you don't want. You are filling it with feeling. You are rehearsing it over and over again. And the subconscious, being always awake, says, "This must be what they desire. This must be the order." And so it sets to work to create conditions that match the fear, to draw circumstances that mirror the anxiety, to arrange events that make the picture come true. That's why worry is so destructive. You may spend 5 minutes a day affirming peace, but then spend 5 hours rehearsing fear, and the subconscious multiplies whichever seed is stronger and more consistent. Joseph Murphy often compared the conscious mind to a captain of a ship. The captain gives orders, but the crew below deck, the subconscious, carries them out without question. If the captain says, "Steer into the rocks," the crew obeys, even if it means the ship will be destroyed. If the captain says, "Sail toward the open sea," the crew obeys, and the voyage is safe. Now imagine what happens when the captain is confused, giving one order in the morning and the opposite order at night. The crew runs in circles, following both commands, producing nothing but chaos. That is what happens when we affirm abundance but secretly nurse thoughts of lack, when we pray for health but whisper fear of disease, when we visualize success but then rehearse failure. The subconscious is faithful, but it is not wise. It only obeys the orders impressed upon it. This is why I tell you the law never sleeps. Right now, in this very moment, your subconscious is at work carrying out the images, the feelings, the convictions that you've impressed upon it. Even while you lie in bed at night, it continues to turn those impressions into conditions, weaving them into the fabric of your experience. And here is the liberating truth. Just as it can magnify resistance into struggle, it can magnify acceptance into blessing. Just as it can grow weeds, it can grow roses. Just as it can take the picture of fear and bring forth disaster, it can take the picture of peace and bring forth harmony. The law does not stop. It only changes direction based on what you feed it. So let me ask you, what have you been planting? What thoughts do you rehearse most often? What images do you carry into sleep? Because the subconscious never says no. If you fill it with doubt, it multiplies doubt. If you fill it with thanksgiving, it multiplies thanksgiving. The great mistake most people make is thinking the few moments of prayer or affirmation will outweigh the hours of hidden resistance, but the subconscious does not count minutes. It responds to the weight of feeling. Whatever impression carries the most emotional force is the one it accepts as true, and once it accepts it, it begins to execute it without delay. And so I remind you, the law never sleeps. It is impartial, relentless, and exact. It will magnify the picture you give it, for better or worse, until your world reflects it. That is why you must be vigilant. That is why you must stop rehearsing what you do not want and begin impressing what you do want. And in just a moment, I will show you the clearest sign of resistance, the hidden mistake that almost every person makes when they pray. It is the reason prayers fail, and once you see it, you will never pray the same way again. Here is something that shocks many people when they first hear it, because it runs so deeply against what they've been taught to believe about prayer. Most prayers fail not because God has turned away, not because heaven is closed, not because some mysterious destiny has blocked the answer, but because the prayer itself is charged with resistance. People think they are praying, but in truth they are broadcasting the very opposite of what they desire, and since the subconscious mind is always awake, always listening, always recording, it takes the vibration of that resistance and multiplies it into their life. You see, the subconscious does not listen to the outer words alone. It listens to the inner tone, the secret emotion, the dominant conviction behind the words. You can say with your lips, "I am healed," but if in your heart you tremble with the thought, "I might get worse," the subconscious does not accept the words. It accepts the fear. It does not respond to idle speech. It responds to feeling, and feeling always outweighs language. Think of a person who prays every night for sleep. They kneel, they fold their hands, and they say, "God, please help me sleep." Yet under those words lies another message, louder and more powerful. "I cannot sleep. I am afraid I will lie awake again. I am anxious about tomorrow." And what does the subconscious receive? Not the gentle petition for rest, but the heavy suggestion of insomnia. And because the subconscious never argues, it takes the suggestion as truth and makes it real. The person rises from their prayer more restless than before, and they wonder why heaven has ignored them. But heaven has not ignored them. The law has simply magnified the resistance hidden in their prayer. Or picture a man praying for wealth. Outwardly, he declares, "I am prosperous. I attract abundance." But inside, there is a guilty voice whispering, "I don't deserve it. Money is bad. Others will envy me." That guilt is resistance, and the subconscious hears it louder than the affirmation. So what grows? Not wealth, but lack. Not prosperity, but struggle. The man may repeat his words 1,000 times, but as long as the emotion of guilt is stronger than the words of prosperity, the prayer cannot bear fruit. Murphy used to say, "It is no use to affirm one thing with your lips and deny it in your heart, because the subconscious listens to the heart." This is why begging and pleading never work. When you beg, you announce lack. When you plead, you announce separation. Every sigh, every groan, every anxious repetition carries the message, "I do not have. I am not yet. I am waiting. I am struggling. I am lacking." And since the subconscious hears only that tone, it multiplies lack. it brings back to you exactly the feeling you sowed. That is why so many people pray for years, and nothing changes. Their words point in one direction, but their feelings point in the opposite, and the subconscious magnifies the stronger impression every time. I remember hearing Murphy describe this principle with the phrase, "It is no use to bully the subconscious. You cannot shout it into agreement, you cannot trick it with phrases you do not believe. You must gently persuade it. You must present it with a suggestion it can accept, one that feels possible, one that does not clash with the hidden conviction of the heart. If you cannot say, 'I am healed,' because that feels false, you may say, 'Healing is taking place now,' or 'Every day I grow stronger.' If you cannot say, 'I am wealthy,' without resistance rising up, you may say, 'Wealth flows to me in greater measure,' or 'I am being prospered in all my ways.' The point is not to fight the subconscious but to soothe it, to lead it step by step into a new conviction, until it accepts the suggestion as natural, as obvious, as true. So when you wonder why prayers fail, remember this: the subconscious listens to the music of the prayer, not the words alone. If the music is filled with doubt, fear, guilt, or resentment, the prayer is a hymn of resistance, no matter how holy the words may sound. But if the music is filled with quiet confidence, with gentle gratitude, with a simple sense of peace, then the subconscious accepts it as truth, and the law sets to work at once to manifest it. And now we are ready to go deeper. We have seen that blessings are already here, we have seen that the law never sleeps, and we have seen that prayers fail when resistance is hidden in the feeling. But this leads us to a greater question. What exactly builds this wall of resistance? What are the hidden builders that stack stone upon stone until the flow of life is blocked? If you can identify the builders, you can stop them, you can dismantle their work, and you can let the light shine through again. And that is where we are going next. Here is where we begin to unmask the builders of the wall, and the first of these is doubt. Doubt is like a double tongue, speaking one word in the morning and another at night, saying yes today and no tomorrow, asking for one thing while secretly expecting the opposite. Doubt is subtle, it rarely shouts, it whispers. It does not always appear as open denial. More often it hides itself in cautious phrases, in little hesitations, in the way you tack on the words, "I hope so," after a prayer, or "maybe it will work," after an affirmation. Each time you do that, you cancel your own command, and the subconscious mind, faithful servant that it is, obeys both instructions and produces only confusion. You see, the subconscious is not a judge, it is not a critic, it does not argue your case, it accepts whatever is impressed upon it, whether by conviction or contradiction. When you say one thing and feel another, when you declare one truth and harbor its opposite, the subconscious is like a ship's crew receiving orders from a drunken captain, turning the wheel first to the left, then to the right, until the vessel goes nowhere but in circles. This is why doubt is so deadly. You can make the greatest affirmation in the world, but if behind it there lurks the faintest, "What if?" that question mark will undo the sentence. The subconscious magnifies the impression that carries the most feeling, and doubt, being charged with fear, often has more emotional force than the affirmation spoken with the lips. A man may say, "I am healed," yet tremble inside at the doctor's report, and the trembling outweighs the words. A woman may affirm, "I am prosperous," yet feel a knot in her stomach when the bills arrive, and the knot outweighs the sentence. This is the double tongue, and a house divided against itself cannot stand. The subconscious cannot bring forth harmony when it is fed both belief and unbelief at the same time. Joseph Murphy often reminded us that you cannot mix oil and water. You cannot sow wheat and expect corn. You cannot plant two contradictory seeds in the same soil and hope for a pure harvest. The subconscious will grow whatever is impressed, but when you press opposite instructions into it, the result is frustration, delay, confusion, and failure. That is why so many people, after months or even years of affirmations and prayers, cry out in despair that nothing has changed. The truth is that something has changed, but the change is mixed, inconsistent, blurred, because the instructions have been mixed, inconsistent, and blurred. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you walk into a dark room and you turn on a lamp. The light shines, it fills the space. Now imagine at the same moment you also close the shutters, draw heavy curtains, and place a blanket over the lamp. The light is still shining, but it cannot break through. Doubt is that blanket. Faith is the light. When you doubt, you are smothering your own lamp, canceling your own prayer, dimming your own vision, and the subconscious, which is the faithful room of your inner life, reflects back not the pure light but the confusion of both light and darkness at war within you. So how do we overcome doubt? You do not fight it directly, for fighting only gives it more attention, and what you attend to, you feed. Instead, you replace it with something stronger, something simple, something that carries feeling. Instead of saying words that feel false, choose words that feel possible, even obvious. Say, "It is passing away," rather than, "I have no pain," if the first feels truer to you. Say, "Every day I grow stronger," rather than, "I am perfectly strong," if the first carries no inner resistance. The subconscious does not require you to leap a mountain in one step. It only requires consistency and sincerity. Feed it a suggestion it can accept, and it will magnify that suggestion until the mountain is moved. So let me ask you now, have you been speaking with a double tongue? Have you been saying one thing to God and another to yourself? Have you been trying to push faith through your lips while harboring unbelief in your heart? If so, it is no wonder that your prayers have seemed delayed, your affirmations seemed weak. But the moment you decide to align your words with your feelings, to speak only what you can believe, however small, the moment you stop contradicting yourself with doubt, the wall of resistance begins to crumble, for the subconscious is not against you. It is only confused by your double tongue. And once you speak with one voice, one conviction, one clear belief, the law of the subconscious will magnify it without hesitation, and your blessing will begin to flow. Now we have seen doubt for what it is. The first builder of the wall, the double tongue that cancels prayer and multiplies confusion. But doubt does not stand alone. It has a brother. More vivid, more dramatic, more destructive, and that brother is fear. Doubt whispers, but fear shouts. Doubt cancels quietly, but fear paints pictures in the mind so strong that the subconscious cannot resist them. And if doubt is a double tongue, then fear is a prophet of disaster, declaring with certainty that what you dread is on its way. And unless you understand how fear operates, you may find yourself rehearsing tragedy until tragedy appears. Let us turn now and unmask fear, the second builder of the wall. Fear is the great actor of the mind. Where doubt whispers, fear dramatizes. Where doubt hesitates, fear rehearses entire tragedies with perfect detail, with color, with sound, with feeling so strong that the subconscious cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality. Fear is prayer in reverse, because it uses the very same ingredients that make prayer effective: imagination, repetition, and emotion, but instead of directing those powers toward peace, health, and abundance, it directs them toward danger, sickness, and loss. Think of it. Every time you sit and picture in your mind the worst that could happen, every time you let your heart race with dread over tomorrow's outcome, every time you replay the scene of failure, you are in fact offering up a dark prayer. And the subconscious, never sleeping, never arguing, receives that prayer and sets about bringing it to pass. I want you to see how subtle this is. People imagine that fear is simply an unpleasant feeling they endure, but in reality, fear is a command. It is a picture charged with energy. When you feel fear, you are impressing the subconscious with a vivid image of what you do not want. For example, think of a person who fears losing their job. They wake up each morning rehearsing how the boss might fire them, how the bills will pile up, how the house might be lost. With each fearful rehearsal, they impress the subconscious with more detail, more emotion, more conviction. And since the subconscious never distinguishes between what is wanted and what is dreaded, it takes those fearful pictures as orders, and life begins to shift, circumstances begin to align, and often the very thing feared is the thing that happens. The boss suddenly seems colder. The bills arrive with greater weight. The atmosphere becomes heavy with the suggestion of loss, and the person cries out, I knew it would happen." What they do not realize is that knowing, that rehearsing, that feeling, was itself the cause. Joseph Murphy often told the story of how fear is like a captain steering a ship straight into the rocks. The conscious mind, when it indulges fear, gives the order, head for the rocks. The subconscious, faithful crew that it is, obeys without question, because it has no ability to argue or resist. And when the ship is wrecked, the captain may cry out against fate or luck, but it was his own fearful order that sealed the outcome. This is why fear is so powerful. It commands with conviction, because fear always feels real. You can tell yourself that a good outcome is possible, but if you feel fear, that emotion overshadows your words. The subconscious listens to the music, not the lyrics, and fear's music is loud and convincing. And notice this: fear never travels alone. It carries with it a sense of expectation. When you fear something, you live as though it has already happened. You see it in your mind, you feel it in your body, you prepare for it as though it is certain. That is why fear manifests so quickly. It has the full package: the image, the emotion, and the expectation. This is also why Murphy said, "What you fear you bring to pass." It is not magic. It is law. The subconscious magnifies whatever is most vividly impressed upon it, and fear, being full of feeling, carries a vividness that casual affirmations often lack. So what do we do with fear? First, we must recognize it for what it is: a reversed prayer. Instead of saying, "I am well," it says, "I am sick." Instead of affirming, "I am safe," it declares, "I am doomed." Instead of picturing success, it paints failure. When you see fear this way, you stop treating it as a harmless mood and begin treating it as a dangerous suggestion you must refuse to dwell on. The way to dissolve fear is not by fighting it, for struggle only feeds it, but by replacing it with faith. Fear rehearses disaster. Faith rehearses blessing. Fear imagines loss. Faith imagines gain. Fear fills the subconscious with dark pictures. Faith fills it with bright ones. Both use the same law. Both impress the mind with emotion. But one builds the wall higher, while the other tears it down. Let me put it plainly. If you can worry, you can pray. If you can imagine disaster, you can imagine blessing. If you can rehearse failure with feeling, you can rehearse success with feeling. The same power is at work. You only need to redirect it. And when you begin to picture what you desire with the same conviction you once gave to fear, when you feel the joy of health, the relief of prosperity, the warmth of love, the subconscious will accept those impressions just as faithfully, and life will begin to arrange itself in harmony with them. So remember this: fear is not a passive emotion. It is an active order. It is a prayer in reverse, and the law of the subconscious, impartial and tireless, magnifies it into your world. Refuse to let fear be your prophet. Refuse to let it write the script of your tomorrow. Instead, take that same vivid imagination, that same emotional power, and place it on what you desire. For the subconscious does not care whether the picture is bright or dark, it only obeys. And the moment you shift from fear to faith, from dark rehearsal to bright rehearsal, the tide turns, the ship steers away from the rocks, and blessings begin to flow again. Now we have unmasked fear, the second builder of the wall, the prophet of disaster that turns imagination against us. But fear has a close ally, one that works more quietly, more subtly, yet often more persistently. That ally is guilt, the silent saboteur that whispers, "You do not deserve good," and robs you of blessings before they can even take form. And that is what we will confront next. Now let us turn to the next builder of the wall, one that often does its work so quietly that people never realize how completely it controls their lives, and that builder is guilt. Doubt shuffles back and forth. Fear paints disasters with a loud brush. But guilt operates like a whisper that never stops, a background voice repeating, "You don't deserve it, you are not worthy, blessings are for others, but not for you." And though it whispers softly, it is one of the most destructive forces in the human mind, because the subconscious, faithful and unquestioning, takes guilt at face value, and arranges conditions in life to confirm it. If you carry guilt inside you, if you secretly believe you are unworthy of love, unworthy of prosperity, unworthy of health, then the subconscious has no choice but to build a world that matches that belief. It will reject good, as though it were poison, and it will attract circumstances that punish you, delay you, frustrate you, until you live out and experience the sentence that guilt pronounced within. Think of how many people struggle for years without realizing that the very reason they cannot accept their blessing is because guilt is blocking the door. A man prays for wealth, but deep inside, he remembers every mistake, every failure, every harsh word. And though he says, "I desire prosperity," the subconscious hears another order. "I must pay for my sins, I must atone through lack." And so opportunities pass him by, doors close, money slips through his fingers, and he feels cursed. But it is not a curse. It is guilt acting as a saboteur, persuading the subconscious to reject the very prosperity he is asking for. A woman longs for love, yet inside she carries the thought, "I don't deserve happiness, I ruined my last relationship, I am unworthy." And so when kindness comes, she distrusts it. When love appears, she pushes it away. When peace knocks, she slams the door. She thinks life is unfair, but in truth life is only echoing back the guilt she has impressed upon her subconscious. Joseph Murphy used to say that guilt is like a verdict stamped on the heart, and the subconscious executes the sentence. If the verdict is guilty, then life becomes the prison. If the verdict is forgiven, then life becomes free again. This is why he emphasized forgiveness so often, not just forgiveness of others, but forgiveness of self. For as long as you hold yourself guilty, you are sending a constant suggestion to the subconscious. Do not bless me, do not heal me, do not prosper me. And the subconscious, impartial servant that it is, obeys. Now think of guilt as a chain. Every thought of unworthiness, every remembrance of failure, every harsh self-judgment adds another link. And the longer the chain grows, the heavier it becomes, until blessings cannot enter because the door is bound tight. The tragedy is that most people never stop to question the guilt. They accept it as natural. They believe they must carry it forever, as though God requires payment through suffering. But that is false. That is resistance dressed in the clothing of religion or morality. Life does not withhold blessings because of your past. The subconscious does not keep records of your sins like a bookkeeper waiting to settle accounts. It only responds to the impression you give it now. If you impress guilt, it multiplies guilt. If you impress forgiveness, it multiplies forgiveness. The law is impartial. Let me offer you a simple image. Imagine you are trying to fill a cup with water, but you keep your hand over the top. No matter how much water flows, the cup remains empty because your hand blocks it. That hand is guilt. Remove it, and instantly the cup fills. The water was never lacking, the supply was never cut off, the blessing was never denied. It was guilt that blocked it, and the instant you forgive yourself, the instant you release the false belief that you must suffer for the past, the hand is lifted and blessings rush in. So hear me well. Guilt is the silent saboteur, the builder of the wall, that convinces you blessings cannot be yours. But guilt has no power except the power you give it. You can dissolve it with one act, one thought, one affirmation of forgiveness, and when you do, the subconscious accepts that forgiveness as truth and begins at once to arrange conditions in harmony with it. That is why Murphy often taught the simple phrase, "I release you, and I am released." When you forgive another, you release yourself. When you forgive yourself, you release the chains, and once guilt dissolves, the wall of resistance crumbles a little more, and blessings, long delayed, begin to find their way through. We have now seen doubt, the double tongue. We have seen fear, the prophet of disaster, and we have seen guilt, the silent saboteur. Each of them is a builder of the wall, stacking stones of resistance between you and your blessings. But there is yet another, one that poisons the soil itself, one that turns the sweetness of life bitter, and that builder is resentment. Let us now uncover how resentment, left unchecked, keeps the heart in bondage and the blessings at a distance. Resentment is perhaps the most deceptive of all the builders of resistance because it so often disguises itself as justice, as memory, as loyalty to your own pain. People think, I have a right to be angry. I have a right to remember how I was wronged. I have a right to hold on to this bitterness. But in truth, resentment is like pouring poison into the very soil where you are trying to plant your blessings. You may scatter the seed of prayer. You may affirm peace and prosperity. You may even visualize health and happiness. But if resentment lies in the soil of your heart, every seed will be twisted. Every sprout will be choked. Every harvest will be bitter. For the subconscious is impressionable and impartial, and when it is soaked in resentment, it accepts that impression and multiplies it until your outer world mirrors your inner hostility. Think of what resentment really is. It is not a one-time anger that passes in the moment. It is a rehearsed anger, a relived injury, a wound kept open by constant thought. When you resent someone, you replay the insult, you rehearse the injustice, you imagine again and again the words spoken, the deed done, and each replay strengthens the impression on your subconscious. You may think you are hurting them by holding on to it, but in truth, you are only hurting yourself, for your subconscious hears it as a command. It hears, I am still in pain, I am still wronged, I am still angry, and it sets about producing more conditions that confirm the anger, more situations that echo the hurt, more relationships that trigger the same resentment, until your life becomes a cycle of bitterness. Joseph Murphy used to say that resentment is like holding a burning coal in your hand, hoping it will scorch the other person, while all the time it is burning you. And how true that is. The one who wronged you may be far away, unaware, even happy, but you, the one carrying resentment, are drinking the poison daily. Your body feels the stress. Your mind replays the scene. Your subconscious multiplies the suggestion, and the very blessings you desire, peace, prosperity, love, cannot grow in that poisoned soil. You block them, not because they are withheld, but because you will not release the bitterness that strangles them at the root. Picture a garden. The gardener plants roses, but he also lets weeds grow unchecked. At first, the roses and weeds grow side by side, but as time passes, the weeds spread, their roots entangle, they rob the soil of nourishment, they overshadow the roses, until the flowers cannot bloom. That is resentment. It spreads quietly, it entwines itself with every thought, it robs the soil of joy, it overshadows love, and eventually, it becomes the dominant impression, and since the subconscious does not resist, it accepts the weeds as easily as the roses, and it multiplies them. But here is the liberating truth. Resentment can be dissolved in the very moment you choose forgiveness. Forgiveness is not approval of the wrong, it is release of the poison. It is the decision to say, I will not carry this any longer. I free you, and in doing so, I free myself. Murphy often taught a simple affirmation for this. God's love fills my soul, and I love to share it. When you say it and feel it, you are planting roses where weeds once grew, and slowly but surely, the soil becomes sweet again, and blessings that could not grow before begin to sprout and flourish. So ask yourself, honestly, who are you still resenting? What story are you still rehearsing? What injury are you still replaying? Because as long as you cling to resentment, you are building a wall higher and higher, and blessings cannot pass through. But when you release it, when you truly let it go, the wall crumbles. The soil is cleansed. The subconscious accepts peace, multiplies peace, and returns peace to you in outer conditions. We have now uncovered doubt, the double tongue that cancels belief, fear, the prophet of disaster, that rehearses tragedy, guilt, the silent saboteur that whispers unworthiness, and resentment, the poison in the soil that strangles blessings. Together they form a mighty wall, a fortress of resistance that blocks the flow of life. But remember, what has been built can be torn down, and what has been planted can be uprooted. And so, in the next part, we will see how these four builders reinforce one another, how they weave themselves into a net that entangles nearly every human mind, and how understanding their alliance gives us the power to dismantle the wall completely. Now that we have looked at doubt, fear, guilt, and resentment one by one, it is time to see how they operate together, for these builders rarely work alone. Each one by itself can delay your blessings, but when they join forces, they create a fortress so strong, so complete, that many people spend their entire lives trying to break through it, without ever realizing that the wall is not outside them, but inside them. Think of how doubt, fear, guilt, and resentment feed each other. Doubt begins by canceling faith. You speak a word of truth, but doubt whispers, "What if it doesn't happen?" That whisper weakens your conviction, and into the weakened space, fear steps in. Fear paints the picture of failure, disaster, or loss. And once you feel fear, guilt rises to remind you that perhaps you deserve this punishment, perhaps you have earned the suffering, perhaps you are unworthy of good. And when guilt has finished its cruel work, resentment takes over, pointing at others, blaming, replaying wrongs, filling the soil with poison. Together these four create a cycle that feeds itself endlessly. Doubt weakens, fear magnifies, guilt condemns, resentment poisons, and the circle repeats. Picture a man who wants prosperity. He begins by affirming abundance, but almost instantly doubt appears. What if it never comes? What if this is just empty talk? That doubt opens the door to fear, and fear begins to show him pictures of unpaid bills, eviction notices, failure in his business. Those pictures weigh heavy, and guilt awakens. Maybe this is happening because I've made mistakes. Maybe I don't deserve to prosper. Maybe I am destined to struggle. And with guilt gnawing at him, he turns bitter, resenting others who succeed, feeling anger toward those who seem to have what he does not, poisoning his own soil with envy. And so the blessing he desired is completely blocked, not by fate, not by God, not by lack of supply, but by the alliance of the four builders inside his own mind. Or think of a woman praying for health. She speaks words of healing, but doubt sneaks in with the thought, the pain is still here. Maybe nothing has changed. That doubt feeds fear, and she begins to imagine her condition growing worse. She feels dread of what tomorrow might bring. Fear then invites guilt, whispering, maybe this illness is punishment, maybe you are paying for your past mistakes. And when she believes that lie, resentment is quick to follow. Why me? Why do others enjoy health while I suffer? And so the soil becomes poisoned. The subconscious hears nothing but mixed messages, fear-filled images, self-condemning thoughts, and bitter emotions, and it obeys them faithfully. The wall of resistance grows higher, and the blessing of health, already present, cannot flow through. Joseph Murphy warned that these four mental poisons must be recognized and uprooted, for they are the root of almost every failure in prayer, almost every delay in blessing. They are not accidents. They are not rare exceptions. They are common patterns of the human mind. And because they work together, they often feel overwhelming, as though life itself were against you. But the truth is, life is not against you. These poisons are against you. They form a net around your subconscious, and until you see the net, you cannot escape it. Once you see it, however, you realize that each strand can be cut, each wall can be dismantled, each poison can be replaced with its antidote. Now here is the important insight. All four of these builders spring from one false belief, the belief in separation. Doubt says you are separated from certainty, fear says you are separated from safety, guilt says you are separated from worthiness, and resentment says you are separated from love. But separation is a lie. The truth, as Murphy always taught, is that the subconscious connects you directly to the infinite supply of life, that blessings are never withheld, that abundance is the law, that health is natural, that love is your essence. When you remove the false belief of separation, the builders lose their power, the wall falls, and blessings flow freely once more. So now you can see how doubt, fear, guilt, and resentment operate not as isolated enemies but as partners, weaving their threads into a thick fabric of resistance that blocks the flow of life. But do not despair, because just as there are four builders of resistance, There are 4 antidotes that dissolve them. Confidence dissolves doubt, faith dissolves fear, forgiveness dissolves guilt, and love dissolves resentment. Each antidote is stronger than its poison, each one is natural to the soul, and each one, when impressed upon the subconscious, tears down the wall, brick by brick, until there is nothing left but open space for blessings to enter, and that is where we are going next, to learn the antidotes, to replace poison with healing, to substitute the false with the true, so that the invisible wall becomes no wall at all. We have seen how doubt works like a double tongue, canceling faith with a whisper, planting one seed in the morning and another at night, creating only confusion in the fertile soil of the subconscious. But here is the liberating truth. The antidote to doubt is confidence. And confidence is not some dramatic burst of emotion, not some reckless bravado, but a quiet, steady assurance that what you have impressed upon your subconscious is already taking shape, already being arranged, already unfolding. Confidence is not loud, it does not need to be. Confidence does not argue, it does not plead, it does not strain, it simply knows. Just as you do not doubt that the sun will rise tomorrow, just as you do not question whether a seed planted in good soil will sprout, so too must you treat your prayer with the calm certainty that the law is working, the subconscious has accepted, and the result is on its way. Now, here's why this matters. Doubt is fueled by constant checking, by constant questioning, by the restless urge to peek under the soil to see if the seed has sprouted, and in doing so, people uproot what they planted, they say an affirmation, they pray a prayer, but the next moment they ask, will it really happen? What if it doesn't work? What if I fail again? And those questions are like digging up the seed every day. Confidence, on the other hand, plants the seed and lets it be. It does not anxiously check. It trusts the law of growth. It knows the soil will do its work unseen, in silence, in darkness, until the sprout breaks through in its own time. Joseph Murphy often used the courtroom image. Your subconscious is the judge, and whatever you declare with conviction, the judge accepts and enforces. If you stand trembling and say, I hope it works, I think it might, I wish it could, the judge hears uncertainty and cannot issue a ruling. But if you stand calm and declare, it is done, it is mine now, I rest in the truth, the judge bangs the gavel and the matter is settled. Confidence is the language the subconscious respects, because confidence is the mark of belief. Let me give you a picture. Imagine 2 farmers. One plants seeds, and then every day digs them up to check if they are growing. He finds nothing but disturbance, broken sprouts, wasted effort. The other plants his seeds, waters them, and goes about his life, knowing that beneath the soil a process has begun, invisible but unstoppable. Weeks later his field is green, while the first farmer's ground is barren. The difference is not in the seed, nor in the soil, but in the attitude of the planter. The first lived in doubt, the second lived in confidence. And so it is with prayer. The one who prays with doubt cancels his own request, while the one who prays with confidence rests in assurance and sees the harvest. So how do you build this confidence? By choosing words that carry conviction for you, by speaking them slowly, by repeating them until they sink into your feelings, and then by letting them rest. You do not need to shout. You do not need to force. You only need to affirm quietly. It is done. I am guided. I am healed. I am prospered. I am at peace. Say it as though you were stating a fact, as though you were describing the sunrise or the rain falling. The subconscious does not require drama. It requires conviction. And when you speak with calm assurance, it accepts the impression as truth and sets about expressing it. So the antidote to doubt is not more struggle, not more repetition, not more desperate effort. The antidote to doubt is confidence, simple, quiet, steady confidence that the law of the subconscious cannot fail, that what is planted will grow, that what is impressed will be expressed. And when you pray this way, when you affirm this way, when you live this way, doubt loses its power, the double tongue is silenced, and the wall of resistance begins to fall. And now that we have seen how confidence dissolves doubt, we must turn to the next antidote, the one that conquers fear. For if doubt is the double tongue, fear is the prophet of disaster, and the only way to silence that prophet is to raise a stronger voice, the voice of faith. Fear, as we have seen, is prayer in reverse, a dark rehearsal of what you do not want, a prophet of disaster speaking with such vividness and conviction that the subconscious mind cannot help but accept it. But the antidote to fear is faith, and faith is not a fragile wish, not a desperate hope, not a shaky attempt to believe something that does not feel real. Faith is a deep knowing, a settled conviction, a calm assurance that the power within you is greater than anything outside you, that the law of the subconscious is working in your favor, that life itself is tilted toward blessing and not toward curse. Faith is not about straining to believe something improbable. It is about recognizing what is already true, already present, already available, and then resting in it with quiet joy. Think about how fear operates. It takes the imagination, fills it with pictures of failure or loss, charges those pictures with emotion, and repeats them until they feel inevitable. Faith operates the exact same way, but in the opposite direction. Faith takes the imagination and fills it with pictures of success, healing, abundance, love, and peace. It charges those pictures with gratitude and joy. It repeats them until they feel inevitable. And the subconscious, impartial and obedient, accepts whichever impression is stronger. So if you can imagine disaster with dread, you can just as easily imagine blessing with joy. If you can feel the cold hand of fear, you can also feel the warm embrace of faith. The law does not change. Only the direction changes. Joseph Murphy often reminded us that the subconscious does not know the difference between what is real in the outer world and what is vividly imagined with feeling. To the subconscious, both are equally true. So when you imagine yourself healed, whole, vibrant, and you feel the relief of it, the ease of it, the gratitude of it, the subconscious accepts that as fact and begins to reorganize the body to match it. When you imagine yourself prosperous, paying bills with ease, giving generously, enjoying abundance, and you feel the joy of it, the freedom of it, the gratitude of it, the subconscious accepts that as fact and begins to arrange circumstances, opportunities, and people to match it. Faith is simply using the same law as fear, but in the direction of blessing rather than curse. Picture it this way. Two people stand on the edge of a field. One looks out and says, "I see weeds, thorns, and barrenness. Nothing will grow here." And because he believes it, he throws down no seed, and sure enough, nothing grows. The other looks out and says, "I see rich soil ripe for planting. I see a harvest already on its way." And because he believes it, he plants generously, waters faithfully, waits patiently, and sure enough the harvest comes. Both were standing on the same field. The difference was not the soil. The difference was the vision. Fear saw barrenness and created barrenness. Faith saw abundance and created abundance. And so it is with your mind. Fear looks at the same life and sees only failure. Faith looks at the same life and sees only success. And whichever vision you impress with feeling is the one the subconscious magnifies into your world. So how do you build this faith? You begin by choosing to picture the outcome you desire rather than the outcome you dread. You close your eyes, and you rehearse success as vividly as you once rehearsed failure. You see yourself walking in health. You see yourself enjoying prosperity. You see yourself surrounded by love and peace. And you let gratitude rise in you as though it were already true, because in the eyes of the subconscious, it is true. You practice this not once, not occasionally, but daily, until the feeling of faith becomes stronger than the feeling of fear. And just as fear once felt inevitable, faith now feels inevitable. Faith, then, is not a blind leap into the dark. It is a steady walk in the light of what you know to be true. It is not desperation, it is confidence. It is not struggle, it is surrender. And when you cultivate this faith, fear loses its grip, the prophet of disaster is silenced, and the subconscious, receiving only the picture of blessing, begins to multiply it without resistance. So let us be clear. Fear is not your master. Fear is only faith turned in the wrong direction. And the moment you redirect it, the moment you choose to imagine good instead of evil, success instead of failure, healing instead of sickness, the whole machinery of the subconscious begins to work for you and not against you. Faith is the antidote to fear. And once you live in faith, the wall of resistance grows weaker still, for one of its strongest builders has been cast out. And now that we have seen how faith replaces fear, we must move to the next antidote, perhaps the most liberating of all, because it dissolves the chains that hold the heart in bondage. That antidote is forgiveness, and it is the power that destroys guilt at its root. We have seen how guilt works as a silent saboteur, whispering that you are unworthy of blessing, convincing you that life must punish you, persuading your subconscious to block good, and attract conditions that confirm condemnation. But the antidote to guilt is forgiveness, and forgiveness is not a timid word, not a weak excuse, not a polite gesture to smooth things over. Forgiveness is a mighty force, the power that breaks chains, the light that dissolves shadows, the key that unlocks the prison doors of the mind. Forgiveness is not only something you extend to others, it is something you must extend to yourself, because as long as you carry guilt in your own heart, you are giving constant instructions to your subconscious to resist your own blessings. Forgiveness says, I am free, I am worthy, I am released. And the subconscious, hearing that declaration, begins to arrange your outer world in harmony with it. Think about how guilt binds a person. A man prays for prosperity, but deep inside he remembers every failure, every mistake, every missed opportunity, and that memory becomes a verdict stamped on his heart. I am guilty. I do not deserve abundance. And so, though he speaks words of prosperity, the subconscious hears the louder verdict and blocks the very opportunities he seeks. A woman longs for love, but she secretly tells herself, I have ruined things before, I am not lovable, I am guilty. And so, even when love appears, she sabotages it, she pushes it away, because her subconscious has accepted the guilt as law. In both cases, guilt has become the seed, and the harvest is struggle, loneliness, and lack. But the moment forgiveness enters, the seed changes. Forgiveness says, the past is over. I am free now. I accept good now. And the subconscious, impartial and obedient, begins to create conditions that confirm freedom instead of bondage, worthiness instead of condemnation. Joseph Murphy often taught that forgiveness is not about excusing the wrong, but about releasing yourself from the poison of it. To forgive is not to say, it didn't matter, but to say, it will no longer bind me. Forgiveness is a form of mental hygiene, a cleansing of the soil, so that blessings may grow. He would often recommend the simple affirmation, I freely forgive everyone, and I sincerely wish them harmony, health, peace, and all the blessings of life. When you repeat this sincerely, you are uprooting the weeds of guilt and planting roses of release. And the subconscious, hearing this new song, multiplies it, until peace replaces turmoil in your experience. But perhaps the hardest forgiveness is self-forgiveness. Many people find it easier to forgive others than themselves, because they feel their own mistakes are too great, their own sins too heavy. Yet this is the very weight that keeps them in bondage. You must learn to forgive yourself, not once, not halfway, but completely. You must say, I did what I did, but I am free now. God does not condemn me, and I will not condemn myself. I am worthy of love, of health, of prosperity, of peace. Speak it slowly, feel it deeply, and the subconscious will accept it as truth. And once it does, guilt loses its grip, the chains fall away, and blessings that have been waiting at the door rush in as though a dam has broken. Let me give you an image. Imagine a man carrying a heavy stone on his back. Every step is slow, every breath is labored, every effort is harder than it should be. He prays for relief, but still he carries the stone. He wonders why his prayers are not answered, but he has never thought to lay down the burden. That stone is guilt. Forgiveness is the act of setting it down. The moment he lays it aside, the path becomes light, his steps quicken, his breath comes easy, and he realizes the weight was never required, It was only carried out of habit. So it is with guilt. The moment you forgive, the weight is gone, and blessings that seemed so distant suddenly meet you with ease. So remember this. Guilt is a false verdict. Forgiveness is the true acquittal. Guilt builds the wall, forgiveness tears it down. Guilt whispers, "You are unworthy." Forgiveness declares, "You are free." And when the subconscious hears forgiveness spoken with conviction, it multiplies it into your life until every chain is broken, every prison door is open, and blessings flow freely once more. Now we have seen how confidence dissolves doubt, how faith conquers fear, and how forgiveness releases guilt. But there is one more antidote, perhaps the most powerful of all, because it dissolves resentment, the poison that strangles the soil of the soul. That antidote is love, and it is the universal solvent, the force that heals, harmonizes, and restores, and that is where we must turn next. We have come now to the final antidote, the one that dissolves resentment, and that antidote is love. Love is the greatest power in the universe, because it is not merely an emotion, not merely a passing feeling, but the very essence of life itself. Love heals where resentment wounds. Love unites where resentment divides. Love harmonizes where resentment poisons. And just as resentment is rehearsed injury, love is rehearsed blessing. Just as resentment replays the wound until it festers, love replays the truth until it heals. The subconscious mind, always open, always faithful, will accept whichever one you impress most strongly, and if you fill it with resentment, it will give you a harvest of conflict, sickness, and bitterness. But if you fill it with love, it will give you a harvest of peace, harmony, health, and joy. Think of how resentment works. A person wrongs you, and instead of letting the moment pass, you replay it over and over again. You add color, you add detail, you add feeling, until it grows larger than life inside you. Each rehearsal strengthens the impression on the subconscious, and the subconscious, impartial as always, begins to produce more conditions that mirror that resentment. More conflicts appear, more arguments arise, more situations unfold that justify your bitterness, until you are convinced that life itself is against you. But life is not against you. It is only echoing the poison you have planted. Now think of how love works. When you choose to see the divine presence in others, when you affirm that the same life that flows through you flows through them, when you declare, "God's love fills my heart and flows out to all," you are impressing the subconscious with harmony. And the subconscious, faithful servant that it is, begins to arrange conditions of harmony in your life. Conflicts dissolve, relationships heal, opportunities arise, health improves, peace surrounds you, because you have planted love in the soil of your mind. Just as surely as weeds choke the roses, love dissolves the weeds. Joseph Murphy often said that resentment is poison and love is the antidote. He would encourage people to affirm daily, "God's love fills my soul, and I radiate love, peace, and goodwill to all." When this is repeated sincerely, resentment has no ground left to stand on. The subconscious accepts the impression of love, multiplies it, and returns it in the form of harmonious conditions. And you will notice this not only in your relationships but in your health, your work, your finances, because love is not limited to one area. Love is the universal solvent. Wherever it is impressed, it dissolves conflict and restores harmony. Let me give you a simple image. Imagine a glass of muddy water. You could spend hours trying to pick out the dirt, straining, filtering, struggling, but the water will remain cloudy. But if you place the glass under a flowing faucet and let clear water pour in, slowly the dirt is displaced, and eventually the glass is full of only pure water. That is love. You do not need to wrestle resentment out of your mind. You only need to pour in love until it displaces the bitterness. You affirm love, you imagine love, you feel love, you radiate love, and resentment has no choice but to dissolve. So ask yourself now, who are you still resenting? Whose face brings bitterness to your mind? Whose name stirs anger in your heart? Do not think you are hurting them by holding on to it. You are only hurting yourself. You are poisoning your own soil, blocking your own blessings. But the moment you choose love, the moment you release them, and send goodwill, the poison is neutralized, the soil is cleansed, the wall of resistance falls, and blessings that were waiting flow in freely. And so, we have seen how each antidote replaces its poison. Confidence replaces doubt, faith replaces fear, forgiveness replaces guilt, and love replaces resentment. Each antidote is stronger than the poison it replaces, and each one is natural to your soul. They are not foreign, they are not forced. They are the very essence of who you are. And when you choose to live in them, the wall of resistance cannot stand. But there is one more secret, one more principle you must understand. The subconscious mind cannot remain empty. Once you uproot the weeds, once you dissolve the poison, you must plant roses in their place, because nature abhors a vacuum. And that is where we will turn next, to the law of substitution, the practice of filling your mind with good so that resistance can never return. Now we come to a principle that many people overlook, and yet it is one of the most vital of all. You cannot simply tear out weeds and leave the soil bare, because bare soil will always grow weeds again. You cannot merely dissolve fear, or doubt, or guilt, or resentment, and then leave your mind empty, because the subconscious will not tolerate emptiness. It must be filled, it must be impressed, it must be given direction. Nature abhors a vacuum, and the mind abhors it even more. If you do not plant roses, weeds will return. If you do not replace the poison with its antidote, the poison will creep back in. So the law of substitution is this. Every negative thought, every destructive feeling, every poisonous emotion must be dissolved and then immediately replaced with its opposite, until the subconscious becomes so saturated with good that resistance has no room to return. Think of a house that has been locked up for years. The air is stale, the windows are coated with dust, the furniture covered in cobwebs. You cannot simply sweep out the dust and walk away, because in a week the dust will return. You must open the windows, you must let fresh air flow in, you must fill the house with light, with warmth, with life. In the same way, once you sweep out fear, you must let in faith. Once you sweep out doubt, you must let in confidence. Once you sweep out guilt, you must let in forgiveness. Once you sweep out resentment, you must let in love. And if you continue to let these forces flow in, the stale air of resistance cannot return. Joseph Murphy taught that substitution is the key to permanent transformation. If you drive out fear but do not plant faith, fear will come back. If you release resentment but do not plant love, anger will return. If you let go of guilt but do not plant forgiveness, condemnation will creep back. And if you silence doubt but do not plant confidence, hesitation will soon speak again. But when you substitute the positive for the negative, when you plant roses instead of weeds, when you impress health instead of sickness, prosperity instead of lack, harmony instead of conflict, the subconscious, faithful gardener that it is, multiplies the good until it becomes the dominant crop of your life. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a farmer who owns a field rich with fertile soil. Each evening he has the choice of what seed to scatter. If he scatters thorn seeds, thorns will grow. If he scatters rose seeds, roses will grow. If he scatters nothing at all, weeds will creep in, because the soil will not remain empty. Now imagine that every night before sleep, you are that farmer, standing in the field of your subconscious. If you allow resentment, guilt, fear, or doubt to remain, you are scattering thorns. If you do nothing, if you leave the soil empty, weeds of worry will creep in by morning. But if you deliberately scatter roses, affirmations of love, faith, forgiveness, and confidence, then roses will grow, blessings will blossom, and your field will be filled with beauty. The soil cannot choose. It will grow whatever you give it. The choice is always yours. This is why substitution is so powerful. You do not have to fight the negative endlessly. You only need to replace it with a positive again and again, until the positive becomes natural, automatic, habitual. If a thought of fear rises, replace it with a thought of faith. If resentment stirs, replace it with love. If guilt whispers, replace it with forgiveness. If doubt sneaks in, replace it with confidence. And do this not with strain, not with anger at yourself for slipping, but with calm persistence, with the steady assurance that each substitution weakens the old pattern and strengthens the new one. So remember this: never leave your mind empty. Never imagine that sweeping out the weeds is enough. Plant the roses, fill the space with light. Saturate your subconscious with love, with faith, with forgiveness, with confidence, until resistance has no foothold left. For the subconscious, impartial and exact, will multiply whatever is most consistently impressed. And when you consistently substitute good for evil, blessing for curse, health for sickness, abundance for lack, peace for conflict, you will find that your outer life becomes the perfect mirror of the inner garden you have chosen to cultivate. And so, we have now seen how each antidote dissolves its poison, and how substitution secures the victory, making the change permanent, sealing the soil against the weeds of resistance. But knowing how to dissolve resistance is only the beginning. The greater question is, once the soil is clear, what will you plant? What seeds will you scatter in the fertile ground of your subconscious? For it is not enough to remove resistance. You must actively plant blessings. And that is where we must go next. Here is a law so simple that many overlook it, yet it governs every part of your life with absolute certainty. The subconscious mind is soil, and every thought you impress upon it is a seed. Whatever you sow, it must grow. Whatever you plant, it must produce. It does not argue, it does not discriminate, it does not decide which seed is worthy and which is not. It simply accepts, multiplies, and expresses. And because this law is so constant, so faithful, so impartial, most people take it for granted and misuse it. They scatter seeds of worry and wonder why their life is full of anxiety. They scatter seeds of fear and wonder why misfortune appears again and again. They scatter seeds of resentment and then cry that their relationships are poisoned. But the soil is innocent, it only obeys the law. The harvest is not unfair, it is exact. Whatever is impressed must be expressed, and there is no escape from this truth. Now imagine a farmer standing before his land at dusk. In his hand he holds two bags, one filled with rose seeds and the other with thorn seeds. He has full freedom to choose which seeds to scatter. If he throws the thorns, the land will faithfully grow thorns. If he throws the roses, the land will faithfully grow roses. The soil does not question him, it simply obeys. And every morning he walks through his field and wonders, why is my land filled with pain? Why do I find only struggle? Why is there no beauty here? The answer is obvious to anyone watching. He has planted thorns, night after night. And so it is with the mind. People pray for peace, but they scatter seeds of conflict. They affirm prosperity, but they scatter seeds of lack. They long for love, but they scatter seeds of resentment. And then they weep at the harvest, never realizing that the soil only gave them what they planted. Joseph Murphy often reminded his students that this law of the seed is as exact and impartial as gravity. If you drop a stone, gravity pulls it downward, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what your opinion of gravity may be. And if you plant a thought in the subconscious, it must grow, whether it is a thought of life or death, of joy or sorrow, of blessing or curse. This is why he urged people to guard their last thoughts before sleep, because those seeds fall directly into the soil without resistance. In those drowsy moments, when the conscious mind relaxes, the soil is soft, the gate is open, and the seeds are planted most easily. So let me ask you, what seeds have you been planting? Have you been filling your soil with complaints, with bitterness, with fear? Have you been rehearsing pain more often than you rehearse blessing? Have you been scattering weeds and then crying over the harvest? If so, the good news is this: you can change the seed at any moment. The soil does not care what is planted. It will grow roses as easily as thorns, joy as easily as sorrow, abundance as easily as lack. The moment you choose a new seed, the harvest begins to change. It may not sprout overnight, but it will grow. It must grow, because the law of the seed cannot fail. Let me give you a picture to carry with you. Imagine that each night as you lie in bed, you are standing in your field. In your hand are countless seeds, thoughts of peace, thoughts of health, thoughts of abundance, thoughts of love. And also in your hand are seeds of worry, of sickness, of fear, of resentment. Which bag will you choose from? Because whichever seeds you scatter in those last moments before sleep will be watered all through the night by the power of the subconscious. By morning, their roots will already be deeper, and in time, they will show themselves as conditions in your outer life. The choice is always yours. So remember this. The subconscious is soil, your thoughts are seeds, and the harvest of your life is nothing but the expression of what you have planted. You are never a victim of chance, never at the mercy of fate, never bound by conditions outside you. You are the farmer of your destiny, and the field is always ready, always waiting, always obedient. Whatever you impress tonight will be expressed tomorrow. This is the law of the seed, and once you grasp it, you hold in your hand the key to change any part of your life. And now that we have seen how the law of the seed governs the mind, we must turn to the most powerful moment to plant those seeds, the drowsy state before sleep, when the conscious guard is lowered, and the subconscious is wide open. That is the golden hour, the sacred doorway, the moment when every thought becomes fertile. Let us look at why the night is the best time to plant blessings. Now let us come to one of the most sacred truths you can ever learn about the working of your mind. A truth so simple that many overlook it, yet so powerful that it can change the entire course of your life once you apply it. The most fertile moment to plant the seeds of blessing is in what I call the drowsy state, that quiet, drifting condition between wakefulness and sleep, when your body is heavy, your eyelids are closing, and the conscious mind, with all its doubts, with all its arguments, with all its endless chatter, begins to grow silent. In that brief window, the gatekeeper at the door of the subconscious grows drowsy, and whatever suggestion you give at that time passes through directly, unhindered, unquestioned, accepted as truth. This is the golden hour of every day, the narrow door through which your prayers and affirmations can slip into the inner workshop of creation without resistance. During the busy hours of the day, your conscious mind is wide awake, skeptical, constantly measuring every affirmation against outer evidence. If you say to yourself, "I am prosperous," your conscious mind checks the bank account, sees only lack, and says, "That cannot be true." If you declare, "I am healthy," your conscious mind notices the pain in your body and says, "Impossible." And so, the suggestion never reaches the subconscious. It is blocked at the door by the noisy guard of reason. But at night, when you are drowsy, when the conscious guard nods off, your words and images slide past, without argument. You whisper, "I am healed, I am guided, I am prospered, I am at peace," and the subconscious accepts it without question, as fact, as law, as reality. And once accepted, it immediately begins the silent work of expression, arranging circumstances, reorganizing the body, drawing people and opportunities into harmony with the suggestion. Joseph Murphy often told the story of a man who suffered from stage fright. Every time he prepared to sing before an audience, fear seized him, his throat tightened, and he could not perform. He tried affirmations during the day, but the conscious mind always argued back, saying, "You are afraid you will fail." Finally, he was taught to practice affirmations in the drowsy state before sleep. Each night, lying in bed, he whispered, "I sing with confidence. My voice is clear. I am at ease." At first it seemed mechanical, but he persisted. And because the conscious guard was asleep, the subconscious accepted the suggestion. Within weeks, his fear vanished, his voice grew strong, and he sang before audiences with ease. The only difference was the timing. At night, in the drowsy state, the soil was soft, the gate was open, and the seed sank deep. Think of the drowsy state like twilight between two worlds. By day you live in the world of facts, logic, appearances. By night you enter the world of dreams, imagination, pure suggestion. And at twilight, when day gives way to night, The two overlap for a few minutes. In those few minutes, you hold the power to impress the subconscious with whatever image or affirmation you choose. If you scatter seeds of worry in that twilight, they will sprout into anxiety and struggle. If you scatter seeds of peace, they will sprout into harmony and blessing. The soil is equally ready for either. It only multiplies what you plant. So I urge you, guard this golden moment. Do not let the last words you speak before sleep be words of complaint. Do not let the last images in your mind be pictures of fear or resentment. Do not let the final feeling in your heart be anxiety. Choose deliberately. Whisper the words you want to live tomorrow. See the images you want to walk in. Feel the gratitude of the blessing as though it were already yours. And then rest, knowing the subconscious is at work all through the night, watering the seed, multiplying it, preparing the harvest. And here's the beauty of it. You do not need to struggle. You do not need to repeat endlessly. You do not need to force anything. In the drowsy state, one clear suggestion, charged with feeling, can be enough to move mountains. The law of the subconscious does not require effort. It requires impression. And in that moment, when the guard is down, the impression is strongest. So treat this moment as sacred. Each night, as you drift, you are standing at the gateway of creation. And what you choose to plant in those minutes will bloom in the garden of your life. And now that we understand the power of the drowsy state, we must see the way in which the seed should be planted. For the subconscious does not respond to shouting or force. It opens only to gentleness, to softness, to suggestion spoken with quiet conviction. Let us now explore why gentle suggestion is always stronger than force. If the drowsy state is the golden door into the subconscious, then gentle suggestion is the way to pass through it. Many people fail in their practice of prayer and affirmation because they try to batter the door down with force, shouting words into the silence, clenching their fists, tightening their bodies, straining with effort as though the subconscious were a stubborn mule that must be whipped into obedience. But the subconscious is not moved by force. It does not yield to shouting. It does not respond to strain. It does not bend beneath the weight of effort. The subconscious is tender, impressionable, receptive like a child, like fertile soil, like still water. It responds not to violence, but to softness, not to struggle, but to calmness, not to commands spoken with anger, but to words spoken with quiet conviction. And when you realize this, you stop trying to bully your mind and you begin to treat it as a beloved friend who must be soothed, persuaded, and guided with patience and love. Think for a moment of a mother singing her child to sleep. She does not shout the lullaby, she does not issue stern commands, she does not force the child into rest. She sings softly, she repeats gently, she lets the rhythm carry the child into slumber. That is how suggestion works. Your subconscious is the child, your conscious mind is the mother. If you shout and strain, you only keep the child awake. But if you whisper with calm conviction, if you repeat with love, the subconscious drifts into acceptance, and the suggestion is received without resistance. Joseph Murphy often told the story of a man who tried to change his life by standing before the mirror each night, shouting at his reflection, "I am rich. I am powerful. I am successful." He would go to bed exhausted, but nothing in his life changed, because his subconscious heard only the strain, the desperation, the false note in his voice. Murphy told him to stop shouting and start whispering. Instead of clenching his fists, he was to relax. Instead of bellowing with strain, he was to speak softly, slowly, as though telling a secret to a friend. Wealth flows to me. Success is mine. I give thanks now. At first it felt strange, almost too quiet, almost too easy. But within weeks, opportunities began to appear. His anxiety faded. His circumstances shifted, because his subconscious finally received the impression without resistance. This is the secret many miss. The subconscious is not impressed by volume, but by sincerity. It does not measure the decibel level of your words. It measures the feeling behind them. A calm whisper filled with faith is more powerful than hours of loud repetition, filled with doubt. The subconscious is like soil. You cannot shout a seed into growth. You must plant it gently, cover it lightly, water it faithfully, and trust the law of life to do the rest. So when you practice your night prayer, do not force, do not strain, do not beg as though heaven were far away. Instead, speak as though the truth were already yours. Say softly, I am healed, I am guided, I am prospered, I am at peace. Repeat it with love. Let the words sink like dew into the soil of your mind. Each repetition deepens the impression, not because of volume, but because of the quiet conviction with which it is spoken. And when the subconscious receives it, it multiplies it without hesitation, bringing it forth in your world as surely as roses grow from rose seeds. So remember this. Gentleness is strength. Calmness is power. Softness is the true key that opens the subconscious. Treat your mind not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a child to be nurtured, as a friend to be guided, as soil to be planted. And when you whisper your suggestion with faith, with love, with gratitude, the subconscious says yes, and blessings flow. And now that you see why suggestion must be gentle, we must look deeper into the very language the subconscious understands. For it does not respond to words as words, nor to phrases as mere sounds. It responds to something deeper, something more powerful. It responds to feeling. Words are only the shell, but feeling is the life within. Let us now discover why moving from words to feeling is the true key to answered prayer. Now we come to the very heart of the practice, the point at which many stumble without realizing it. The reason why so many prayers, affirmations, and repetitions seem to fall flat and bring no change. It is because they remain words only. The lips move, the sentences are spoken, the formula is recited, but the heart remains cold and the imagination empty. And here is the law. The subconscious mind does not respond to words as words. It does not understand English or Spanish or French, or any human language. The subconscious responds to one thing only: feeling. The emotional vibration behind the words is the true language of creation. Words without feeling are like seeds without life, dry shells that never sprout. Feeling is the moisture, the warmth, the spark that awakens the seed and sets growth in motion. Without feeling, the subconscious remains unmoved. With feeling, it is stirred, impressed, and compelled to express what is impressed upon it. Think of how children respond. A child may not understand every word, but the child feels the tone, the warmth, the love, or the anger in the voice, and it is the feeling that moves them. So it is with the subconscious. You may recite, I am prosperous, I am prosperous, I am prosperous, 100 times, but if the feeling behind it is anxiety, if your stomach is knotted, if your heart is heavy with worry, the subconscious accepts the worry, not the words. It says yes to the emotion, not to the syllables. You may whisper, I am healed, but if in your heart you are scanning your body for pain, fearful that it remains, the subconscious accepts the fear, not the affirmation. The true prayer is not the phrase. It is the feeling that the phrase awakens. Joseph Murphy often gave this image. Words are like wood, and feeling is like fire. You can pile up words endlessly, but without the flame of feeling they remain cold and inert. The moment you add feeling, the moment you imagine vividly and give thanks as though the thing were already done, the words ignite, the subconscious is set ablaze, and the law begins to operate. That is why gratitude is such a powerful tool, because gratitude carries the feeling of fulfillment. To say, I give thanks, is to act as though the blessing is already here, and the subconscious, taking that feeling as fact, begins to arrange life in harmony with it. Let me give you a simple picture. Imagine a man standing before a locked door with the key in his hand. He knows the key is correct, but instead of turning it in the lock, he only taps it against the door over and over again, growing frustrated, shouting that the key does not work. Of course, the door does not open. The key must be used as it was designed to be used. Words without feeling are like tapping the key against the door. Words with feeling are like turning the key in the lock, and when the lock turns, the door opens effortlessly. So the practice is this. Do not bully your mind with mechanical words. Do not recite phrases you do not feel. Instead, enter into the state of the answer. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and imagine the scene fulfilled. If you are praying for health, feel the joy of being strong, the ease of movement, the lightness of freedom. Whisper softly, "Every cell is whole. Divine life flows through me now," and let gratitude rise as though it were already true. If you are praying for wealth, imagine yourself paying every bill with ease, giving freely, enjoying abundance. Say gently, "Wealth, success, I give thanks," and let the relief, the joy, the gratitude fill your heart. If you are praying for peace, picture yourself resting and calm, feeling the soft embrace of safety, whispering, "God's love fills me, I am at peace," until the feeling is real in your body. The subconscious will not wait for tomorrow. It accepts now, whatever is felt is real. So remember this. Words are only the outer shell, feeling is the inner life. Without feeling, prayer is dead. With feeling, prayer is alive. And what is alive must grow. Do not worry about how many times you repeat the words. Worry only about whether the feeling has been impressed. One sentence spoken with deep feeling is worth more than 1,000 sentences spoken mechanically. One vivid picture charged with gratitude is worth more than hours of anxious repetition. The law is simple. What is felt is true, is impressed. And what is impressed is expressed. Now that we understand why feeling is the true language of the subconscious, we must take one more step, because there is a secret key that seals the impression, that convinces the subconscious the blessing is already accomplished. That key is gratitude. And when you add it to your prayer, you close the door to doubt, you silence the voice of fear, and you anchor the blessing as though it were already here. Let us now look at gratitude as the seal that proves your prayer is complete. Now we arrive at one of the most beautiful and most practical truths you can ever practice in your life. Gratitude is the seal of prayer. Gratitude is not a mere courtesy, not a polite thank you whispered out of habit. Gratitude is the inner proof, the evidence, to your subconscious mind that what you have asked for, what you have affirmed, what you have pictured, is already yours. It is the vibration of fulfillment, the emotional signature of completion. When you end your prayer with gratitude, you are telling your deeper mind, this is real now, this is done now. This is not a wish, this is not a hope, this is not someday, this is now. And the subconscious, impartial and faithful, accepts that gratitude as fact, and begins at once to bring it forth in your outer life. Think of how you behave when you receive a gift. The moment it is placed in your hands, you do not continue begging for it, you do not plead with the giver, you do not cry out in desperation. You smile, you rejoice, you give thanks. And why do you give thanks? Because you know the gift is already yours. That is how prayer must be treated. If you continue to beg after you have prayed, you are declaring to your subconscious, I do not have it yet. And the subconscious, hearing the feeling of lack, produces more lack. But if you give thanks as though it were already accomplished, you are declaring, this is mine now, and the subconscious multiplies that conviction until it appears in your experience. Joseph Murphy often told his students to end every prayer with the words, I give thanks. Not because God needs your gratitude, but because you need it. Gratitude anchors the feeling of fulfillment. Gratitude quiets the restless mind. Gratitude closes the door to doubt and fear. And gratitude impresses the subconscious with the sense of completion, which is the very thing it requires to begin expression. Without gratitude, prayer often remains a wish. With gratitude, prayer becomes a conviction. Let me give you an example. A woman once came to Murphy, distressed because her home was filled with conflict. She prayed desperately every night, please let there be peace, please change my family, please stop the fighting. But her subconscious only heard the desperation, the focus on conflict, the sense of lack. Nothing changed. Murphy told her to stop begging and start thanking. Each night, as she drifted into the drowsy state, she was to say, God's love fills this home, harmony is here now, I give thanks. She was to picture her family smiling together, laughing together, feeling joy together, and to let gratitude rise as though it were already so. Within weeks, her home transformed. Arguments softened, kindness returned, peace filled the rooms. Why? Because gratitude sealed the suggestion. The subconscious accepted harmony as fact, and life rearranged itself accordingly. So make this your practice. Whenever you pray, whenever you affirm, whenever you visualize, always end with thanksgiving. Whisper softly, "I give thanks, it is done, I rest now." Let the words be more than sound. Let them carry the feeling of completion. Feel the joy as though you had already received the blessing. Let gratitude wash over you until your heart is light, your mind is calm, and your soul is satisfied. That is the seal, that is the proof, that is the key that convinces the subconscious that your prayer is complete. And remember this, gratitude is not only for the end of prayer, it is for the whole of life. The more you live in thanksgiving, the more blessings flow, because gratitude is itself a seed. The more you give thanks, the more the subconscious multiplies conditions for which you can give thanks. Gratitude is a magnet. It draws to you people, circumstances, and opportunities that match its vibration. To live in gratitude is to live in constant prayer, constant fulfillment, constant flow. So let this truth sink deep. Gratitude is the seal of prayer, the anchor of conviction, the bridge between the unseen and the seen. Without it, your words may remain empty. With it, your words are filled with life. And when you close your prayer with gratitude, you walk away not as a beggar waiting for a gift, but as a receiver rejoicing in a gift already given. And now that we have seen the power of gratitude, let us look at how to make this practice even more practical. For while the law is universal, and the principles are timeless, the subconscious responds best to suggestions that are simple, short, and rhythmic. In the next part, we will see how practical affirmations, spoken slowly and with gratitude, can serve as the daily seeds you scatter to reprogram your destiny. We have seen how the law of the seed operates, how the drowsy state opens the door to the subconscious, how gentle suggestion bypasses resistance, how feeling is the true language of creation, and how gratitude seals the prayer with conviction. Now we must bring it all together into something you can use each day with ease. Something simple and practical. Something so clear that even a child could remember it and practice it. And that is the power of short affirmations spoken slowly, rhythmically, with feeling and thanksgiving. The subconscious does not respond to complexity. It does not respond to elaborate phrases. It does not require long speeches filled with impressive words. It responds to simple statements charged with emotion. A single phrase, repeated with conviction, is far more powerful than a paragraph repeated mechanically. The subconscious loves rhythm. It loves simplicity. It loves consistency, and when you speak short affirmations in a calm, steady tone, they sink deep into the fertile soil of your mind and take root. Joseph Murphy often said, "The simplest formula is the most effective." He would encourage people to choose affirmations no longer than a sentence, and to repeat them softly until they became like a lullaby, carrying the mind into rest and the subconscious into agreement. For example, if you seek health, you might affirm, "Every cell in my body is filled with divine life." Say it slowly. Picture your body alive with light. Feel the warmth of health flowing through you. Add gratitude by whispering, "I give thanks for perfect health." If you seek prosperity, you might affirm, "Wealth success. I give thanks for divine abundance flowing freely." Say it rhythmically, like a song. Feel the relief of paying every bill with ease, the joy of giving generously, the freedom of abundance. If you seek peace, you might affirm, "God's love fills me, I am at peace." Whisper it slowly. Feel the calm settle over you like a warm blanket. Let gratitude rise, as though peace were already your natural state. These are not just words. They are seeds. Each repetition presses them deeper into the soil. Each word, spoken with feeling, plants another root. Each phrase, sealed with gratitude, grows stronger until the subconscious accepts it fully. And once accepted, expression is inevitable. Health begins to return, prosperity begins to flow, Peace begins to surround you, not because of chance, not because of luck, not because of some outside favor, but because the law has been set in motion. Now let me give you a picture. Imagine a man rocking gently in a chair at night, whispering to himself, "I am safe, I am guided, I am at peace." At first the words feel small, almost insignificant. But as he repeats them, he begins to feel calmer. His breath slows. His body relaxes. Gratitude rises. The subconscious hears the tone, feels the vibration, accepts the suggestion. And while he sleeps, the law multiplies it. By morning he feels lighter, more rested, more centered. Over time, his days begin to change, his relationships soften, his circumstances shift, all because of a simple phrase whispered with conviction each night. That is the power of practical affirmations. So I say to you, choose your affirmations carefully. Keep them short. Keep them clear. Keep them filled with life. Do not scatter a dozen phrases at once. Plant one or two seeds, and plant them deeply. Repeat them in the drowsy state. Repeat them with feeling. Repeat them with gratitude. Let them sink down into the soil, and then trust the law of growth. Do not dig them up with doubt. Do not uproot them with fear. Do not poison them with resentment. Let them be. Water them with gratitude. Shine the light of faith on them. And wait, for the harvest is certain. And here is the beauty. These affirmations are not only for health, or wealth, or peace. They can be shaped for any desire, any situation, any need. You may say, "I am guided to right action." You may say, "Divine order governs my life." You may say, "Love flows through me to all." The words may change, but the principle remains the same. Keep them short. Keep them rhythmic. Keep them filled with feeling. Seal them with gratitude. And the subconscious, impartial and exact, will accept them and express them. So remember this. Affirmations are not magic formulas. They are seeds. And when planted rightly, they grow. When spoken softly, with feeling, in the drowsy state, sealed with gratitude, they reprogram your destiny. Do not underestimate their power. Do not neglect their practice. For one short phrase, whispered with conviction at night, can dissolve years of struggle and open the floodgates of blessing. And now that we have seen how to plant seeds of blessing with practical affirmations, we must take one final step, for it is not enough to plant once. We must learn how to keep the soil fertile, how to live daily without resistance, how to make this practice a way of life. And that is what we will explore next. Now that we have seen how to plant seeds of blessing, let us turn to the question of how to keep the soil fertile, how to prevent the weeds from creeping back in, how to live in such a way that resistance cannot take root again. Just as the body requires daily hygiene bathing, brushing, cleansing, so too does the mind require daily hygiene. You would not go weeks without washing your hands or brushing your teeth, yet many go years without cleansing their inner life, allowing worry, resentment, and fear to accumulate like dirt, like plaque, like disease, until their entire outlook is clouded. And then they wonder why affirmations seem weak, why prayers seem unanswered, why blessings seem delayed. The truth is simple. If the soil is not tended daily, weeds will grow. And so you must treat your inner life with the same care you give your outer body. You must practice daily mental hygiene, sweeping away the dust of doubt, releasing the poison of resentment, cleansing the stains of guilt, and refreshing the soul with gratitude, forgiveness, love, and faith. Think of your mind as a garden. Each morning the dew falls. Each night the darkness rests upon it, and every day seeds from the air, from birds, from the wind, land upon the soil. Some are good, some are weeds, but all are ready to grow. If the gardener is diligent, he plucks the weeds while they are small, waters the roses, tends the soil, and the garden flourishes. If the gardener neglects his duty, weeds multiply, roots entangle, flowers are choked, and the garden becomes a wilderness. So it is with the mind. Each day, impressions fall upon it from news, from conversations, from memories, from worries. And if you do not practice daily mental hygiene, if you do not consciously pluck out the weeds of negative thought, they will take root and multiply. Joseph Murphy often recommended a simple practice: begin and end each day with gratitude. The moment you wake, before you think of yesterday's troubles, before you scan your body for pain, before you count the bills waiting to be paid, whisper softly, "Thank you. Today is blessed. Divine order governs my life. I am guided, I am safe, I am at peace." Do not let the first seeds of the day be weeds. Plant roses immediately, and the subconscious, receiving them in that still moment between sleep and wake, begins to arrange the day in harmony with them. And at night, as you enter the drowsy state, repeat the practice, release the day with forgiveness. Say, "I freely forgive everyone, I release, and I am released. God's love fills me, and I am at peace." Then affirm once more the desire of your heart: health, wealth, guidance, peace, and seal it with gratitude. In this way, the bookends of your day are filled with blessing, and the weeds have no chance to multiply. But daily mental hygiene is not only about affirmations, it is also about awareness. Throughout the day, you must watch your thoughts as carefully as you watch your diet. You would not eat spoiled food knowingly. Do not let spoiled thoughts linger in your mind. If fear arises, replace it with faith. If resentment stirs, replace it with love. If guilt whispers, replace it with forgiveness. If doubt speaks, replace it with confidence. Do not scold yourself for having the thought. Simply substitute the opposite. Each substitution is a cleansing, each replacement a strengthening. Over time, this becomes natural, as automatic as washing your hands before eating. Let me give you an image. Imagine a house with windows open to the street. Dust, smoke, and noise drift in throughout the day. You cannot stop it all, but you can sweep the floor regularly, open the curtains, let fresh air in, keep the house clean. If you wait weeks, the house becomes filthy, and cleaning becomes a heavy burden. But if you sweep each day, the house remains fresh, inviting, peaceful. Your mind is that house. The world sends impressions, many of them unhelpful. But if you practice daily mental hygiene, a little gratitude, a little forgiveness, a little faith, a little love, the inner house remains clean, bright, receptive to blessings. So remember this: the great victories are not won in grand battles fought once, but in small, steady practices repeated daily. Do not neglect the hygiene of your mind. Keep it clean, keep it fresh, keep it filled with light. And when you do, resistance cannot take hold, weeds cannot grow, and blessings flow naturally, because the soil remains fertile. And now that we understand the importance of daily mental hygiene, let us look at the simplest, most childlike practice of all, the one that opens the subconscious more easily than any other. For while the adult mind complicates, analyzes, and resists, the child trusts. And when you recover that simple trust, you open the gate wide to blessing. So let us now turn to the principle of childlike faith. There is a reason why every great teacher, every great mystic, every voice of truth throughout the ages has pointed back to the faith of a child as the purest and most powerful key to the kingdom of life, and the reason is simple. The child does not argue, the child does not analyze, the child does not resist. When you tell a child that tomorrow you will go to the park, the child does not say, "But how will we get there? What if it rains? What if something goes wrong?" No, the child accepts. The child rejoices. The child tells others as if it were already a settled fact, because in the child's mind, it is. That is faith, pure and uncomplicated, and that is exactly how the subconscious receives suggestion. It does not require logic, it does not demand proof, it does not check statistics, it only asks, "Do you believe this? Do you feel this is true?" If the answer is yes, it accepts it instantly. If the answer is no, it rejects it just as instantly. And so, the greatest secret is not to force yourself into heavy belief, not to strain your mind into complex arguments, but to return to the simple trust of a child. Think of how adults often pray. They say the right words, they make the correct affirmations, but then immediately they begin to calculate, how will this come to pass? When will it arrive? What steps must be taken? What if it fails? And in doing so, they cancel their own prayer, because the subconscious does not respond to logic, it responds to feeling. A child, on the other hand, accepts without calculation. If told that a gift is waiting for them, they rejoice as though it were already in their hands. They picture it, they feel it, they talk about it, they rest in the certainty of it. That is why a child's imagination is so powerful. They do not struggle to make it real. They assume it is real already. This is the pattern of true prayer. You must learn to pray as a child prays, affirm as a child affirms, trust as a child trusts, simply, joyfully, confidently. Joseph Murphy often said that one of the greatest mistakes in prayer is making it heavy, making it complicated, making it a burden. Prayer should not be a battle. It should be a song. Affirmations should not be shouted with strain. They should be whispered with ease. Visualization should not be forced with tension. It should be enjoyed with delight. And when you take on the spirit of a child, you naturally fall into this way of ease, because the child does not doubt their own imagination, the child does not resist their own joy, the child does not question the certainty of what has been promised. And the subconscious, hearing this, simple, uncluttered trust, accepts it immediately and sets to work to make it so. Picture this. A child is told by their parent, "Tomorrow we will go to the fair." That very moment, the child begins to see it in their mind. They picture the rides, the laughter, the colors, the food. They tell their friends, "Tomorrow I am going to the fair." They do not wait for proof. They do not ask for evidence. They live in the certainty of the promise. And when tomorrow comes, their joy is doubled because they have been rehearsing it all along. That is how you must treat your affirmations. Do not say, "I hope I am healed." Say, "I am healed now," and rejoice as if it were already done. Do not say, "I hope prosperity comes." Say, "I am prospered now," and picture yourself already living in abundance. Do not say, "I hope for peace." Say, "I am at peace now," and feel the calm as though it were already your natural state. Speak it, feel it, rejoice in it, and the subconscious will accept it with the same certainty a child accepts the promise of tomorrow's joy. So let this truth sink deep. Faith is not struggle, faith is not effort, faith is not calculation, faith is childlike trust. It is the simple acceptance that what you affirm is already true, the joyful imagination of the desired outcome, the calm rest that says, "It is done." And when you cultivate this spirit, resistance has no chance to argue. For resistance always hides in complexity, in calculation, in overthinking. Childlike faith cuts through it all with simplicity. And once the subconscious accepts the suggestion, the outer world must obey, for the law cannot fail. So, remember this. You do not need to strain to believe like a philosopher. You only need to trust like a child. Say your prayer once. Whisper your affirmation once. Imagine your blessing once. And then rest in the certainty that it is already so. Smile, rejoice, give thanks, and let the subconscious do its work. That is faith like a child, and it is the straightest, simplest path to answered prayer. And now that we have learned how childlike faith opens the gate wide, let us look at what life becomes when resistance is gone, when the wall has crumbled, when the soil is clean and fertile, when the seeds of blessing are planted daily. It is a life that flows with ease, a life where blessings appear as naturally as water running downhill. Let us now step into that vision, the flowing life. Now let us imagine together what happens when the wall of resistance is gone, when the poisons of doubt, fear, guilt, and resentment have been dissolved, when the soil of the subconscious has been cleared of weeds and planted with seeds of faith, love, confidence, and forgiveness. Life, which once felt heavy and full of struggle, becomes light, effortless, and free. Instead of feeling as though every step is uphill, as though every blessing must be forced, You discover that good flows to you as naturally as water runs downhill, as effortlessly as the sun rises, as quietly as the seasons change. This is the flowing life. And it is not reserved for saints or mystics or a chosen few. It is the natural condition of anyone who learns to align with the law of the subconscious and stop blocking the blessings that have always been here. Think of how most people live. They strain, they struggle, they fight, they beg, they push against circumstances as though life were an enemy to be conquered. They think that progress requires endless toil, that prayer must be desperate, that affirmations must be shouted, that blessings must be chased. And the more they struggle, the more resistance they create, because struggle itself is a suggestion of lack, of distance, of separation. But once the wall falls, once resistance is gone, the need for struggle disappears. You discover that blessings were never hiding, that prosperity was never scarce, that health was never withheld, that peace was never far away. They were always here, waiting at the gate, and the moment the gate opens, they rush in, not by force, but by law. Joseph Murphy often compared it to water flowing through a pipe. If the pipe is clogged with debris, the water cannot flow, no matter how strong the source may be. You may shake the pipe, you may pound it, you may beg the water to come, but nothing changes until the blockage is cleared. Once cleared, the water flows immediately, naturally, abundantly. And so it is with life. The source is infinite, the supply is unending, the blessings are already here. The only problem was resistance clogging the channel. Remove the clog, and life flows. Picture yourself walking beside a river. On one side, the water flows smoothly, effortlessly, bending around rocks, sparkling in the sun, nourishing the trees and plants along its banks. On the other side, where men have built dams and barriers, the water is stagnant, heavy, unmoving, filled with debris. It is the same river, the same water, the same source. The difference is only the resistance. And when the barriers are removed, the stagnant water flows again, fresh and alive. That is what happens in your own life when resistance is gone. What once felt blocked and stagnant begins to move with ease, and blessings that seemed impossible appear naturally. This is the life you were meant to live, not a life of endless battle, but a life of flow. A life where you wake in gratitude, move through your day with confidence, forgive quickly, love freely, trust like a child, and rest each night with peace in your heart. In such a life, problems still arise, but they are not walls. They are ripples in the stream, quickly carried away. Challenges still come, but they do not overwhelm. They are simply opportunities to plant better seeds, to practice faith, to release resistance more deeply. In the flowing life, you do not feel at the mercy of circumstances. You feel aligned with a law that always works, always provides, always blesses. So let this vision fill you. No more fighting, no more begging, no more straining, no more resisting. Instead, life becomes a current and you are carried by it. You are not passive. You still plant seeds. You still give direction, but you no longer push against the tide. You flow with it, and because the tide is infinite good, you find yourself surrounded by health, wealth, love, and peace. That is the flowing life, and it is not distant, it is not rare, it is not someday. It begins the moment you let go of resistance and live daily in confidence, faith, forgiveness, and love. And now that we have walked through every stage, seeing the wall, unmasking the builders, learning the antidotes, planting the seeds of blessing, practicing mental hygiene, and living with childlike faith, it is time to bring everything together in a closing word of power, a final summary, an affirmation to carry in your heart, and a call to continue this journey into the next teaching. We have traveled a long road together, and yet it is not really a road at all, but a circle that brings you back to yourself, back to the place where every blessing has always been waiting. At the beginning, we saw that most people are not defeated by life itself, but by an invisible wall, a barrier built within their own minds, a wall called resistance. We saw how blessings are never withheld, never far away, never absent, but how doubt, fear, guilt, and resentment The four builders of resistance stack stone upon stone until the flow of life is blocked. We saw how prayers fail not because heaven is deaf, but because hidden resistance cancels them at the root. And then we saw how each builder has its antidote, how confidence dissolves doubt, how faith conquers fear, how forgiveness releases guilt, how love heals resentment, and how substitution keeps the mind filled with roses instead of weeds. We saw how the law of the seed governs the subconscious, how the drowsy state is the golden doorway, how gentle suggestion bypasses resistance, how feeling is the true language of creation, and how gratitude seals every prayer with certainty. We learned the power of short, rhythmic affirmations, the importance of daily mental hygiene, the simplicity of childlike faith, and the beauty of the flowing life. And now we stand at the end, ready to bring it all together into one truth, one practice, one way of being. So let me say it plainly. Resistance is the only thing that has ever blocked you, and resistance is nothing more than a habit of thought. You do not need to beg for blessings, you do not need to strain for answers, you do not need to force life into obedience. You only need to remove resistance, and the blessings that have always been here will flow to you naturally, abundantly, joyfully, just as water rushes through a cleared channel, just as sunlight floods through an opened window. So too will health, wealth, peace, and love pour into your life once the wall is gone. And the wall is gone the moment you release doubt for confidence, fear for faith, guilt for forgiveness, resentment for love. The wall is gone the moment you plant seeds of blessing in the fertile soil of your subconscious, whispering them softly in the drowsy state, feeling them as true, sealing them with gratitude, and living each day with childlike trust. The wall is gone the moment you realize you were never separated from life's supply, that you were never condemned, that you were never unworthy, that the blessings were never withheld. They were waiting, and they are still waiting, and they are yours now. So let us close with an affirmation, not as empty words, but as a living declaration, spoken with feeling, sealed with gratitude. Tonight I dissolve all resistance. I release doubt, fear, guilt, and resentment. I plant faith, love, forgiveness, and confidence. I give thanks, for the blessings are mine now, health is mine now, prosperity is mine now, peace is mine now, love is mine now. I rest in the truth that the law of life is working for me, through me, and as me, now and forever. Let these words sink deep. Let them become feeling, let them become conviction, let them become your truth. For the subconscious is always listening, and it will multiply whatever you impress upon it. And if you impress this truth tonight, your tomorrow will rise to meet it. And before we part, let me leave you with this. As powerful as it is to dissolve resistance, there is still one hidden habit, one subtle thought pattern, that robs most people of their blessings, even after the wall has fallen. It is not as obvious as fear, not as loud as resentment, not as heavy as guilt, but it works silently, invisibly, undoing the good you plant and canceling the harvest before it comes. Almost no one sees it, and yet it is the silent thief of destiny. And in my next teaching, I will uncover it fully, I will show you how it operates, and I will give you the key to stop it forever. So do not stop here. Do not leave the door half open. Click now, and let us step through together into the next revelation, the one thought that cancels years of struggle, and how to replace it with the thought that guarantees years of blessing.